Langabeer, and my piece Occulmente is a finalist in the SOUNZ Contemporary Award 2018. I grew up in a musical family, and my mother, Charlotte Van Ash, she's a string player, and so she was playing in string quartets and in the St Matthew's Chamber Orchestra, and having various projects with friends where they would rehearse Brandenburg or this and that, and we were always getting dragged along to those rehearsals as kids. And my father is Jim Langabeer, and he's a jazz musician and an improviser who played a big part in setting up the Tauranga Jazz Festival and advocating jazz education throughout the country. And he was always having projects as well, other musicians around, and he was playing his jazz nights around the place. So, and we were being dragged along to those. So we had music around everywhere, and those two different schools of music, the classical and the jazz, were both really prominent in my life when I was growing up. So when I went to study music, I wasn't sure if I wanted to study classical composition or jazz. And I went for the jazz thinking that, well, you just start somewhere and you can incorporate it all eventually. But since I studied classical piano growing up, I knew how to read and write and had studied a lot of classical pieces. And I wanted to get my head around how jazz worked. I think one of the biggest things that's influenced my life as a musician has been working together with people. And during my studies in Wellington, I started collaborating with theatre companies and directors, so I would be making music for their shows, and I always found that to be really enjoyable and fun. And the pressure wasn't necessarily on playing the best music in the world, but making the most appropriate music for the piece that would tell the story. And being on the stage and being in costumes and being a part of a theatrical event, I just really enjoyed it, and that was always a lot of fun. And working with all the people seemed to be pretty easy for me, and managing the groups and band leading. Through working in theatre and for theatrical performances, I have studied a lot of different types of music, because you want to try and learn something that's going to help tell the story. And the director comes to you with a brief, this is set in this time and in this place, and we want to use this kind of music to tell the story. And so it's a little bit of a musicology study, because you're researching all these different kinds of music and learning how you can incorporate it and play it with the musicians that you have available, and have it support the story and the mood of the work. So that just gave me a great, like a template to just try lots of different things. And there was an outcome. You got to play it in a show, and you got to be in the show. So that was really appealing to me. Improvised music has been a big part of my life, absolutely. And since I was young, I would improvise on the piano, and studying jazz, I learnt more how to improvise in that idiom. And it had always seemed to me like some of the avant-garde classical music could be improvised, as if what they're trying to do is play something that doesn't fit into scales and chords as we know it, but is gestural and more exciting, and perhaps it's easier to do it if you don't have to count and keep a beat and watch the conductor. So I was really drawn to improvisation and group improvisation, and the scene at Happy and what was going on there was an amazing place to just get started into that. And it's been something that I've done ever since. group improvisation. And I've found that it's a wonderful thing you can do all over the world, because everywhere you go you'll find musicians who are improvising and experimental musicians, and you don't have to speak the same language, but you can sit down and have a blast and make some music together. My piece Occulmente was commissioned by Mark Matches, and he has a couple of sons. He has 3 sons. 2 of them play music, and one of them I've been playing with really regularly. Is a double bass player, and his brother is a cellist in the Friction Quartet in San Francisco. So Mark commissioned me to compose for Friction Quartet, and their whole agenda is commissioning new modern classical compositions for their quartet, and they've got a beautiful repertoire that they've been developing over the years. When I first started thinking about what I'd do for the piece, I had been listening a lot to an album by Steve Lacey with Roswell Rudd called Trickles, and I'd been talking to my friend about it, Chris O'Connor, Auckland drummer, and Chris said what he loved so much about that piece is that it reminded him of a spell. All the pieces seemed like spells, like incantations, and I really understood what he meant. The main melodies and heads seem like little recipes that get recited, and then the improvisation section sounds like the result evolving from the spell. And so I wanted to make my piece a bit similar to that, like something being conjured up. You set the groundwork, you set a few things in place, and you set the tone, and you know, and then you see what happens. I guess a little bit of a Sorcerer's Apprentice type atmosphere, and I definitely wanted it to have a rhythmical jazz quality, and to get into a sort of a mesmerizing feeling, but I didn't know exactly where it was going to go, and I just started nutting away at it. The phrases and the lines came in an improvisational way out of my brain, and then I would sit down on Sibelius and go, what are those notes there? Those are the ones, yep, up and down like that, you know. So and I didn't know if what I was making was possible, could be played, you know, until I took it to them and they workshopped it a bit, and some things that I thought would be absolutely impossible were actually fine, and other things that I had thought would just be easy, they were like, can we change that, can that go down an octave, and things like that. So I tweaked it around a bit and made it fit. Unfortunately, when they came to book the premiere, they booked it to do it in Philadelphia, which is where I had been living, except at a time when I was going to be in Wellington, and I wasn't going to be able to, I just couldn't feasibly fly all the way over there just to see that. So I was on my way from Hawke's Bay to Cuba Duper Festival in Wellington, and I was on the phone to my husband, who's in Philadelphia, on his phone to me, and I listened to it over the phone. We were driving over the Rimatakas just at that moment, and it was just cutting in and out, and I heard little bits and squeals of violins, and I'm listening to it going, ugh, I hope it sounds okay, really there. So I kind of heard it. I was there a little bit, you know, down the other end of the satellite, and then the recording from that night actually got corrupted, so I never got to hear the recording of that one properly, and the only recording I have of it so far is from a cell phone at the third performance they did of the piece, Friction Quartet did, at Princeton. So that's my little treasure. I hold on to that one pretty carefully. Being a finalist for this award has been incredibly validating, and was a really big surprise. especially when I checked out the other finalists' pieces and realised what fine company I was in, I just felt really, I don't know, I felt really special. It's like, wow, I'm up there with the music professors. So it was a surprise, and it's given me a lot of confidence to write more. And it's really raised my profile in a certain, for a certain group of composers in New Zealand now that know about me, and that's fabulous, So I hope that it opens the door to more collaborations and more commissions and more possibilities for more music. Lots of more!